of them, but
We will.
I just want to mention that besides our core planning team, this might be a good time to go through what we've done already in the county,
Yes.
as you did the other day with the process. The governor first declared a state of emergency on this issue way back in the end of October
Right.
2015, and has a proclamation of a state of emergency.
Right.
And then Amador County Board of Supervisors, in order to qualify for grant funding, Amador County Board of Supervisors had to declare a local state of emergency in Amador County due to pervasive tree mortality. And we have to go ahead and every 30 days have to have this on our agenda. So if you look at our agenda for Board of Supervisors meetings, every 30 days we'll have that on the agenda to declare that state of emergency again. And that's just part of the state process we have to go through to make sure that we're eligible for the funding when it comes in from the California Disaster Act, Assistance Act funding. We're also working at the state level on the, I represent Amador County on the State Tree Mortality Task Force, along with 9 other counties that have pervasive tree mortality. Counties at this time are, the first 6 recognized were Fresno, Tulare, Mariposa, Madera, Tuolumne, Kern, and then Placer, Amador, Calaveras, and El Dorado were added. I don't want to overlap too much on our first presenter's remarks, so that's where I'll stop.
Okay.
And coming up, we'll have Chris Anthony from CAL FIRE. We'll do a similar presentation to what was given last week, but I think it's going to be helpful for those people that weren't here. It's also going to be posted on YouTube and Facebook so that those people that were not able to make the workshop last week, or the meeting today can view it.
You know the road between Amador and Sacramento, don't you?
I do.
Before you start, Tom, are you going to try and capture what's going to be shown on the screen too?
Yes, we are.
That'll start about now.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Anthony. I work for CAL FIRE in the Amador El Dorado unit, and previously was assigned to the statewide tree mortality task force. So what I'm going to do is go through a presentation that I went through for the Amador County workshop last week. Apologize if some of you have already seen it. For those of you that haven't, hopefully it kind of informs you on some of the statewide efforts that are ongoing. So as Supervisor Forster had mentioned, on October 30th, the governor declared or proclaimed a state of emergency as a result of pervasive tree mortality in the Southern Sierra. And at the time, it was really just focused on the 6 counties that Supervisor Forster had mentioned, Tuolumne down to Kern. It has since grown significantly with the addition of 4 additional counties in the northern part of the Sierra. So how did we get here? There's a lot of factors, but these are primarily the main ones. 5 years of drought, increasing climactic temperatures, a declining snowpack, and an unresilient, overstocked forest. And I'll go into some of these here in a moment. So with the drought, many of you have seen these graphs and these charts before, but essentially you can see starting in 2011, before the drought really came in and hit California, the increasing severity in 2012, 13, 14, and 15. And essentially those darker areas are the exceptional areas of drought. And what's interesting is you can see that those dark areas really do correspond with the areas where we see the most significant tree mortality. And as you move into 2016, you can see that we still have areas that are severely impacted by drought, and we are not out of the drought in California by any stretch of the imagination. And again, you can see that those areas where you have the really dark colors, those are the areas where you see the most significant amount of tree mortality. And then as you move north into Calaveras, Amador, El Dorado, and Placer County, we're also seeing significant tree mortality as well. So one of the things I just want to point out is that increasing climatic temperatures really do play a significant factor in this. And when you go back and you look just at California's mean annual temperature dating back to 1895, we've seen on average about a 2-degree increase in temperatures. And NOAA recently published an article, and they said this June was the 14th consecutive month the monthly global temperature record has been broken. So we're on a streak right now, and I would imagine that 2016 may top 2015 as one of the hottest years on record. Additionally, we are in fire season. What's interesting about this chart right here, and this is the top 20 wildland fires in California dating back to 1932, and we have really good records on large fires in California dating back to the early 30s. You would expect to see a fairly wide geographic distribution of fires during that time, dating back to the 30s. But what you actually find is since 1990, we have had 15 of our 20 largest fires in the state of California. And I can tell you that our fire protection system in California is much more robust than it was back in the 1930s. So what does that tell you? So here is some maps of the tree mortality going back to 2012. And what you'll notice here is that you can see the very light yellow and some orange colors kind of speckled through this 6-county area where originally we were starting to see elevated levels of tree mortality. And that yellow is just a slightly elevated above background mortality. So you would expect to see trees naturally dying in the forests. But once they get to a certain level and start showing up, the Forest Service will start mapping those with their aerial detection survey system. And the Forest Service will actually fly the entire state of California every year and map tree mortality. So this was in 2012, again, just the 6-county area. And then as you pan out to 2013, much larger swath of California there, you can see actually an increase in the yellow and in the orange, and essentially, going all the way up to Calaveras County and heading down into Kern. In 2014, again, slight increase in the mortality levels. Again, this is just slightly above background mortality. But then as you move into 2015, where we really saw the most significant and persistent drought, you can see now a very large amount of tree mortality that's occurring in the central and southern Sierra. And basically, the darker the colors, the more significant the mortality is. So as we move into 2016, the Forest Service actually did a special flight in May of a very defined lower elevational band of the Sierra. It was essentially about a 5-day flight, and the updated numbers for 2016 were this right here. So I'll go back and forth. So here's 15, and here's where we're at right now in 2016. Now keep in mind the Forest Service at this particular point in time actually hadn't flown some of the upper elevational bands of the Sierra. And they have since completed those flights, and they'll fly the rest of the state, but it does take time to process those numbers and get the maps updated. So you can see that tree mortality is not going away. I expect it to continue to get worse through 2016. So right now, the official numbers are 66 million total dead trees. That's basically a 26 million increase from 2015, and we're not done with 2016 yet. So we would expect to see that 66 million number increase through this year and into next. So scope of mortality. Again, 10 counties currently are the most impacted. We have over 4,000 miles of roads. These are public roads with dead trees next to them that need to be mitigated. Total of 5.5 million trees that have been determined to be a threat to public safety. And the cost to remove those trees just on private and state land alone is estimated at $2.2 billion. And that doesn't include the trees that are on Forest Service property. So here's some photographs of Mariposa County back in March of 2015, and you can see how quickly things develop. So obviously you have elevated levels of mortality on that hillside, but as you move into October of 2015, you can see how quickly that mortality spreads across the landscape. This is a photo taken in Fresno County looking north into Madera County, and you can see the amount of mortality just in that basin alone. And one thing that's interesting here is you can see the tops of some of those trees starting to fade, and you'll see that in many parts of Amador County as well, and you can almost guarantee that that tree is dead. Even though it has that dead top, it may still have some green needles on it, it's dead. Again, another photo of Mariposa County looking south towards Madera County, and essentially there's over 90% mortality of ponderosa pine. So this is actually one of the most significant issues that we're facing right now, and that is where we get that intersection of dead trees with critical infrastructure, whether that's a residence, whether it's a power line, water conveyance system, a road, utility lines, a community. This is where a lot of the work of the task force is really currently focused, and this is what we call our Tier 1 high hazard zones. And this is where the dead trees really pose the greatest threat and risk to public health and safety. Here's another photograph of the Ponderosa Basin in Mariposa County, and you can see how those dead trees really affect that ingress and egress of that road there. And those are the roads that obviously we are responding on when we go to a vegetation fire. It's also the roads that the residents use to get out of areas like this. So the Tree Mortality Task Force. The Tree Mortality Task Force was formed almost immediately after the October 30th, 2015 proclamation by the governor. It includes 19 directives. We have a total of 7 working groups. There's over 80 different entities as part of the task force, and encompasses 10 counties. The chairs for the task force include CAL FIRE Director Ken Pimlott, Cal OES Director Mark Ghilarducci, and a representative from the governor's office. And essentially we have the task force leaders, of which I was one. I've recently transitioned off of the task force. We have our liaison officers, which include the California State Association of Counties, which Supervisor Forster is the president of, rural county representatives of California and CAL FIRE, and then those are the 7 working groups. And those 7 working groups each have essentially, what we did is we took those 19 directives and we assigned those directives to different working groups to begin implementing those directives directly out of the proclamation. So in good form and fashion, this is an emergency. And in any emergency, what we would normally do is we would develop an incident action plan. Doesn't matter if it's the Butte Fire, the Rim Fire, the King Fire, tree mortality. The way we break it down is we use an incident action plan. And so that's what we did here. So the work of the task force. There's a number of things that we're responsible for. This list does not encompass all of them. But we provide coordination among among agencies and entities. We establish and focus our efforts in the high hazard zones. And those high hazard zones are captured on our tree mortality viewer, which anyone here is welcome to look at. That mapping data is very complex, but essentially what it does is it really focuses the work of the task force. We identify funding sources. I'll be the first one to tell you there's no magic pot of money that's going to solve this entire problem. There's a number of sources of funding that we leverage in order to get work done. We work at reducing regulatory impediments. Anytime we come up to a hurdle or there's a county that's dealing with a regulatory impediment, it's our job to clear that hurdle so that work can get done. Provide public education. I'll talk about some of the websites that we have established. And then expand the use of bioenergy. As some of you may be aware, there's a number of bioenergy facilities that are going offline this year, approximately 7, for about a total of 190 megawatts of energy. It's really important that we work to keep those contracts in place and get extensions so that we have a place to take some of this material, because as I'll mention in a minute, outlets for this material is very challenging, and bioenergy is a very important source. Identify potential storage and utilization sites. I'll talk about that in a minute. Distribute equipment across the high hazard zones. There was originally a purchase that was made by CAL FIRE for equipment to help in our efforts and to assist the counties with theirs. That equipment that was originally purchased was for the 6-county area, and we work to distribute that among all 10 counties now. And then work to identify and promote wood markets. And again, the core to this effort, the statewide effort, is really what happens here locally and providing the support necessary for the local task forces to get work done. So really quickly, outlets. So as many of you know, we don't have as many sawmills in the state of California that we had in the 1980s. And most of those sawmills that currently do exist are operating at or near peak capacity, mainly because of a lot of the salvage logging that takes place as a result of the Rim Fire, the Rough, the King, and the Butte, as well as just managing their own lands, such as SPI. So there's not a lot of capacity at the sawmill to take all of this material. They can take some, but they can't take all of it. There's also the bioenergy contract extensions that I mentioned that the task force is working on. And then there's export markets. So right now, the way federal law is written is we can't export logs overseas. And that was originally put into place to protect the domestic market in California. Right now, we certainly have a pretty substantial excess of dead trees. And so we're hoping that we can overcome the ban on log exports out of the country because there is a market overseas. Some of the forefront items is the California Disaster Assistance Act funding through Cal OES, and Peter Crace is here with Cal OES, and he can brief you on that. But Cal OES has been engaged from the very, very start with this, and they provide much of the funding that makes it available for counties to get work done at a cost share of 75 to 25. Financial assistance to private landowners. This is a big gap in funding. We have sources of funding, but when it comes to that small private landowner to be able to remove dead trees from around their house, there's not enough money to meet the need in terms of what it is that we're looking at, but we're working on that. And then homeowner insurance non-renewals. Many people are having trouble keeping their homeowner's insurance and or receiving non-renewals from their insurance company as a result of the fire risk of where they live. And so there's also the California FAIR Plan, but the FAIR Plan only provides a very limited amount of coverage, and then you can get basically additional insurance to cover things that aren't covered under the FAIR Plan. It's a big issue. There's a lot of people that are getting those non-renewal notices and having a hard time keeping homeowners insurance. So on the federal level, there's a lot of things that we're working on. The first is supporting a solution to fix the wildfire funding at the federal level. And for those of you that may not know, the Forest Service, much of their base budget, when they have a very substantial fire season, that money that comes out of their base budget goes to fighting wildland fire, which essentially leaves less money for them to be able to actively manage their lands. And what we would like to see is we'd like to see a fix to this wildfire borrowing problem so that they have the money available despite how significant or severe the fire season is to do the active management that we know that they want to do. Additional funding for Forest Service Region 5. So on federal land, on Forest Service land, we have the Tier 1 high hazard zones identified as well, and the Forest Service is actively engaged in removing trees in the areas where those trees present the biggest public safety threat. We're working on trying to get them additional funding for more work as well. The NRCS EQIP funding, there's a number of cost share programs that are out there that can help landowners with larger parcels of land to do tree removal and forest enhancement improvement projects. And then the other thing is the Presidential Disaster Declaration. Cal OES has teed this up with FEMA. We are working on it. We need to make sure that when the request moves forward, it's the right time to make the ask. And the reason it's so important is because the counties right now with CDAA, their cost share is 25% of the total cost of their project. But with a Presidential Disaster Declaration, that would drop their share down to about 6.25%. And it's important to keep in mind that the scope, the sheer scope of this is really beyond the local or the state to be able to handle it. And that's why we're hoping that this can be moved forward. I do have to caution you, though, there's never been a federal disaster declaration for tree mortality. So when the state makes the requests, it has to be done the right way. So CAL FIRE efforts, obviously we're involved with the state task force and local efforts as well. We've dedicated over 80,000 hours of staff time to this emergency and redirected about $10 million internally to start dealing with it through either with equipment, tree removal projects, high hazard zone mapping, and public education. So we do have some grants that are starting to be available to counties, nonprofits, fire safe councils, tribes, the California Conservation Corps. And essentially, we will have two sources of funding available specifically for tree mortality this year. The first is through the State Responsibility Area Fire Prevention Fund grant, which is similar to the grants that we've seen in past years. There's $10 million that's been allocated this year for those grants. $5 million of it will be specific to tree mortality in the 10-county area. The other $5 will be available statewide for fire prevention projects. The other money that we have available is the Tree Mortality Task Force grants. And this is $6 million of general fund money that will also support local efforts in the 10-county area for tree mortality. And to fill in some of those gaps where CDAA or other sources of funding aren't able to meet a specific need. And those will roll out on August 22nd. The procedural guide hasn't been posted to our website yet, but when it is, we will let you know.
Chris, can you talk about timeline on that? Was I have down August 22nd through September 28th.
Yeah, and I think that was mentioned in the the statewide task force meeting last week.
So people that time period to apply to the fire grant funding?
Yes, yeah. So I wasn't there, so I didn't hear that end date. But that sounds like a fairly reasonable amount of time for people to get their applications in.
That there'll be more information coming out on that grant process when? In the next week?
I would expect that we would see it either on the 22nd or right before that, because I know the procedural guide is being finalized right now.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. To date. To date, there's been about $190 million that have been either allocated or encumbered to deal with this in the state of California. And this includes a number of agencies, including Caltrans, Cal OES, Cal Fire, the California Conservation Corps, NRCS, Fire Safe Councils. And what's significant about that number is it doesn't include the work that our utility partners are doing, such as PG&E and Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric. They've expended many millions of dollars just mitigating the threats of dead trees to utility lines. So here's some websites. We have a number of different websites based on our audience. And so we have the treetaskforce.org. And basically what that website is it shows you all the work that's being done by the state task force. And it's designed for those stakeholders. But anyone can go access that site. We also have prepareforbarkbeetle.org. And typically that's the website that we refer the public to because they have a lot of questions about, okay, I have dead trees on my property. What do I do now? What can I do to try to save the trees that haven't been infested on my property? You know, things along those lines. And that's what that website is geared towards. And then we have a map mortality viewer, a tree mortality viewer. And that viewer has a number of GIS layers. It's very easy to use. It'll show you where the mortality is. You can even go down to an address level and see where your house is and where the mortality is in relation to your house. And keep in mind, that's constantly being updated based on the Forest Service Aerial Detection Survey data that we receive and update. So I just want to mention this event is really unprecedented in terms of its scale and its size. And there's very few emergencies that cover a 10-county area. And so this is not a short-term event. This is going to be with us for many years. I do believe that we will be successful. I've seen success in the past. We dealt with this at a much smaller scale in the San Bernardino Mountains back in 2003. And they did not have the support of a statewide task force when they were standing up their local task force. It took some time for them to get to the point where they were seeing success and getting work done, but they did. And so we are still ramping up. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we will get there. So with that, I will turn it back over to the supervisors.
You want to answer any questions of the public?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Why we're all here. You haven't mentioned McClintock. You haven't mentioned Oregon, Washington, or Quebec, if that's the one above us in Canada. They all have the same problem. They must be having separate and a number of meetings. Are they having meetings that you're aware of? Question.
So it's a good question. So this isn't just a California issue.
It's not.
This is a Western states issue. And to answer your question, this kind of mortality, has occurred in other parts of the country as well as up in Canada. The one thing that is different about this than some of those other incidents is the sheer population of California in comparison to some of those other areas and the number of residents that are affected by the tree mortality, because we live in these forests where we're seeing so much of the mortality.
Could we ask like maybe one, maybe two questions apiece and then pass it on?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. My question was, have you and other people you're working with these meetings met with any other state or out of our state to find out what they're doing? Has McClintock or the younger congressmen in this area been contacted? I know it's hard to get to him. Have they done anything on the federal level? Or is this just the start of the meetings to get to the meetings to get to the federal funding?
No, good. That's a good question. So I'll address your question about the federal representatives and their engagement. And I can tell you that both from the Senate and the House side, there is engagement. In fact, we had someone from Congressman McClintock's office here on Thursday for the workshop. They are asking a lot of questions. They are receiving briefings. They are very interested and concerned about what's going on locally in the communities. I can assure you that.
I can add on to that too, that the counties, 10 affected counties that are considered high mortality now, sent a letter off to Congressman Costa, and all the other congressmen in the area were copied, including ours, Congressman McClintock. But part of that is asking them to support California's FEMA application. Part of it with FEMA, though, is to change their nomenclature, because right now they don't see tree mortality as an emergency until the trees burn. Then it becomes an emergency. We're trying to get them to recognize it is an emergency and it's catastrophic and people need help. By doing that, we're hoping to try and get those grants approved so that it'll help our local property owners. As the letter states, it will reduce applicants' matches by nearly 50% if we can get FEMA recognition. We're also trying to get an extension of power purchase agreements for biomass facilities, and on private land, support the creation of financial relief mechanisms for private landowners. So we're trying to work every angle to try and get as much help as possible, not only for the big dogs, for CAL FIRE and the other entities, but for the private landowners, because we know the resources are limited.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
This isn't a question, but this is more to answer your question. From the BLM side, we've met with Senator Feinstein's. We've met with Senator Feinstein's reps. She sent 2 of her reps out to the field with us, and we toured.
Monty, can you identify yourself and what you do in the area?
My name is Monty. I'm the Forster for the BLM Motherlode Field Office. So we're the 14-county region from Yuba down to Mariposa. She sits on the appropriations committee, so that's a big deal that even she's listening to us. So, well, you know how that works. That has to be.
Well, some of those questions we can answer afterwards, but
Thank you.
we won't put Monty on the spot too much right now. All right, any other questions for Chris Anthony? All right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris, very much.
Going on, there are, no, Damon, do you have, no, he's just picking the mic up. This issue can be all-encompassing, and it's not what I signed up for when I became a supervisor, or Supervisor Morgan, or anyone else, or our staff members, but it is a big issue, and we have to deal with it. Prior to the State Tree Mortality Task Force, there's a county coordinating committee that meets. There are, I believe, Chris, is down to 7 working groups now, is that correct? 7 working groups at the state that deal with mapping and monitoring, utilization of bioenergy utilization, market development, regulations, public outreach, resource allocation, and forest health and resilience. So just about every day of the week you can attend a meeting on this if you want to. And in fact, CAL FIRE, they have individuals that are taking care of each one of these areas and work on them every day to try and come up with creative solutions to deal with these issues. They also have a landowner assistance subgroup that's been formed to try and come up with solutions for landowners of how to fund, help you fund getting the affected trees off of your property and then where to go with them from there. But primarily the issue is to get the trees down right now.
Right. We're saying take them from horizontal to vertical.
Cover the next area.
Sure.
I'd like to say.
Well, I think that there'll be time after we get through with the public presentations, and we'll get through some questions, and that could answer some of your questions.
Right. As I said, we formed a core planning team several months ago, right when the County Board of Supervisors declared our local state of emergency. And those meetings have been very productive. We have a number of people and organizations that are in this room today have been very critical. One of the real problems is for us to figure out what to do with those trees once they are downed. We don't have lumber mills here anymore, as you know. Yeah. And our biomass plant in Ione has been recently shut down. So one of the companies, frankly, that has stepped forward and is trying to help is Ampine, which is a particle board company down in the Martell area. And they are able to use trees. They don't really care if they've got bark beetle holes in them or not. They just chop them up anyway into particle board. So that's been very helpful, extremely helpful. Again, this meeting today is our first meeting of what we refer to as our Tree Mortality Task Force, which is a broader web of interested parties, including the public. So we thank you all for coming. And we will have, if you look at the bottom of the agenda, we'll have another meeting of this group on November 7th to just update the progress we've made. Let's see, the core planning team has particularly worked on issues like how to find storage sites for these trees once they're cut down. It's not an easy issue because people don't necessarily want to just provide, storage for these dead trees. They want to know how long they will stay there and, what then. So I personally have spoken to the current owner of the old cedar mill up on Highway 88, and they are considering possibly being willing to take some of those dead trees there. And there are other sites we're looking for. Let's see. We've also tried to, we're trying to identify available equipment. It turns out that CAL FIRE has purchased some equipment already with some of that money, as Mr. Anthony mentioned. And I think they're trying to put together a process for where that equipment will be used among the 10 emergency counties. So that's certainly a process.
Before you move on, just on that core planning team, it's not that you're excluded from those meetings, but primarily those are really business meetings for the most affected parties. Amador County participates in that along with CAL FIRE, OES, Caltrans. I'm probably going to miss some here, but our local professional foresters and licensed operators, our Cal-Am Forestry Group, U.S. Forest Service, BLM, who am I missing there? SPI,
All right.
the Ampine, which is now Timber Products. So these are all the people and the groups that are at the ground level trying to figure out what are we going to do with all this material once it comes out of the forest, and how do we get through the grant processes. So that's kind of the minutia that we deal with at those meetings, and they're very productive meetings. If you want to sit for another 2 hours, you can sit during that meeting. But
We just don't allow you to talk, that's all.
yeah, they're really the business meeting that occurs every month for us to get together and strategize how to deal with this situation.
Exactly. So we are, as many counties have already done, we are putting together our application to Cal OES for state emergency monies. And we have, again, part of that is the county emergency declaration, which we have done and we renew every month. Part of it is a tree removal plan that, we've already created. Part of it is putting together, well, we're very grateful to the Cal-Am team, who has volunteered their time so far to put together cost estimates based on the number of trees. They've gone out and done surveys and cost estimates on what it will cost to take these trees down and deal with them. And frankly, we're estimating right now, the Cal-Am team is estimating right now that it will cost us $5 to $6 million to get those trees down. And again, that's just a rough estimate. That number could go up. You bet, and we'll ask Cal-Am folks to speak on, what they've done there. That would be great. Hopefully, some of you went to the public workshop last Wednesday, partly organized by the Cal-Am team, and we had an amazing attendance of nearly 200 people came to that workshop. And again, this is such an urgent issue that I know the other supervisors, and certainly I, hear from many, many people on my email and on my phone every week. People just really desperate and upset, especially people that may be single fixed income seniors who do not have the funds to take these trees down. Yeah, sure. Do you, Cal-Am team, this might be a good time for you guys to come up? You have to draw straws, who's going to speak, or?
Now, the Cal-Am team is on both sides of the river, in Amador and Calaveras, and I got to tell you, the professional foresters that are registered professional foresters that are retired are putting a tremendous amount of time and effort in to help everyone involved.
Hi there. My name is John Heisenbuttle, registered professional forester number 1920. Part of the Cal-Am team. The Cal-Am team, like Supervisor Forster has said, a group of volunteers, all retirees, mostly registered professional foresters, but also wildlife experts and GIS experts. And for the Amador portion of our effort, our goal has been to help Amador estimate the number of dead and dying trees adjacent to county-maintained roads, because those are the trees that, through the California Disaster Assistance Act, monies will be spent on. So it has to threaten a county road. What the Cal-Am team did was do a sample survey of all of the county roads over May through late June to try to estimate the number of dead trees threatening county roads. And we used Highway 49 as the western boundary for the roads we surveyed. In total, everything east of Highway 49 is about 265 miles of county-maintained roads. Our sample size was, we wanted to get about 25% of the roads surveyed. We ended up with about a little over 30% of the roads surveyed, 32%, 86 miles. And what we did was drive, we'd see the trees, we'd evaluate whether or not we could tell the trees that were dead, but we'd get out and we'd look at the trees adjacent and see if they were being attacked by beetles, so we'd chart those as dead trees. Bottom line is we came up with a little over 12 trees per mile of county road dead or dying. And if you apply that to the 265 miles of roads in the county system, it's a little over 3,200 trees that need to be treated.
I'm sorry.
A little over 3,200 trees that need to be treated adjacent to county roads. When we talked with the core group, the Cal-Am team recommended we take some advice from the Tuolumne group and use a expansion factor, because there is no doubt about it, there's going to be another flight of beetles, and we're going to see more dead trees in Amador County. And what the core group decided on was expanding that by 35%. And I hope that's all it is. So at the end of the day, we came up with almost 4,400 hazard trees in the county adjacent to county roads, with a cost of removing at about $1,200 per tree, and we based that on expertise from local loggers, local foresters, and other counties. So it comes up to a price tag of about $5.2 million, like Supervisor Forster said, between $5 and $6 million. And that's what will be applied for in the grant to Cal OES. And the grant is like a bank account. You don't have to spend it all. You can prioritize and spend a little bit at a time. But that's what the grant will look like. And I'll stop there and not overwhelm you with information and see if there's any questions.
Just for your information, I think the estimate we used, John, was about $1,200 per tree
Correct.
to remove these trees.
And just so people know, the 75-25 formula, yes, we are responsible for 25%. We're going to try and do as much of that as possible in kind, but there is a limit to the amount of in kind that you can do. So every taxpayer in this county will be financing the part of the 25% effort. And that's what I tell my people in District 2. Look, we all live in the county. We're all part of it and citizens, and we help each other, whether there's a fire in Ione or the tree mortality upcountry.
Right. And District 3 especially appreciates that, because our district is where most of the mortality is. So.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly up there.
Yes. And this is a little bit unrelated, but I think it's important to also mention that Caltrans is also very engaged in this project. They are well aware, any of you who drive up Highway 88 like I do all the time, there are many, many dead trees along state highways, and they are committed to removing those trees. Caltrans is. Again, it's like anything. It takes a while to hire extra contractors to get out and actually get them down, but they're working on it.
John, if you or Ann or Jan want to address any part of the workshop that was held last week, maybe give a
I think
summary
Ann's going to do it.
of that before we take questions.
I'm Ann Heisenbuttel. I'm a registered professional Forster, license 1894, and a Amador County UCCE Master Gardener. And I wanted to just say a little more than has already been said about the workshop we had last week. As Lynn mentioned, we had almost 200 people. This room was just packed for the morning. We had speakers that included entomologists, forest entomologists, forest products industry, professional foresters, the state agencies, CAL FIRE and Monty and Forest Service. We're here from Forest Service and BLM. A lot of expertise, sharing information about what has caused the problem and what can we do about it. And as we've already heard this morning or this afternoon, that one of the problems is the lack of infrastructure for having a place to take logs. So we're trying to make sure that people address safety concerns above all. One thing I want to mention is that on the Amador County Board website, the audio recording from the workshop is now online, so you can listen to the whole proceedings. In the afternoon, we went to the woods in Pine Grove to see an active bark beetle infestation, and the entomologists helped explain how you can tell before the tree starts to turn brown that you actually have bark beetle infestation and your tree is dead. Safety is one of the most important things everybody emphasized. We need to get those trees from vertical to horizontal if they threaten your home or places where people mill about or roads. So also, bark beetle killed trees dry out very quickly, and they become a hazard more quickly than just your normal tree dying in the forest. So if they are threatening your home, you want to make sure you get a professional to cut the tree down. It's really critical because it's a very hazardous thing to do. One last thing. In the back of the room is a card like this. This provides information about a forest stewardship helpline you can call with questions. An RPF, Registered Professional Forester, answers the call and will answer your question or refer you to people in your area who can help with that. There's on the back are a number of websites with additional information about bark beetles and tree mortality. So please pick one of these up if you weren't here last week and get one. And don't hesitate to call that number if you have questions.
Any questions? And if you're going to ask a question, if you could please get to the mic in front, then we can hear what you have to say. Jan, do you want to add on?
Jan Bray and RPF with on the CalAm team. We do have a list. Tom Tinsley sent me the Amador El Dorado list of loggers, foresters, and tree removal experts. I added to it, and that list is back on the table for y'all, locals.
Hello, my name is Judy Reese. I'm a professional forester working with the BLM relative to their challenges with the tree mortality. Of our speakers who were just up, I had a question relative to the people you've been working with. being a master gardener, for one, have discussions touched seriously on biochar as a possible product solution for utilization of these trees? Okay, we'll just chat.
That question did come up at the workshop last week. We do not have local facilities to produce biochar fuels. So that's our challenge with that one.
Biochar is a form of charcoal that's formed through incomplete burning of the wood. And what it does, it actually freezes the structure of the tree into a very porous, stable carbon that can be added to soils to increase moisture holding capacity, nutrient residence, and decomposition for native plants, agriculture plants, gardens. And what it does is it actually sequesters carbon in the ground as a stable solution to greenhouse gases. So there's even opportunities for sequestering carbon in the soil and recovering carbon credits on the California market by actually pursuing that as a choice. And I believe about $5 million has been invested in research in Humboldt County. It's called Waste to Wisdom, exploring the biochar alternatives for waste wood in California. So anyway, I think it's a partial solution to conserving water and agricultural lands and on our forests. Thank you.
But we would have to have somebody willing to invest in such an operation, right?
It would, the equipment's available in Humboldt County, and I think it should be considered right along with bioenergy because there's many benefits.
I think you spent too much time in Humboldt County. Biochar is largely something that's generated through biomass facilities, bioenergy facilities. We need, most times, so we need bioenergy facilities like in Ione to generate that. So it doesn't happen on its own.
But, okay, we're getting into the technical part. Let me give you just 2 seconds here. We're working, the State Tree Mortality Task Force and the local counties are working with the California Public Utilities Commission and the California Air Resources Board to try and get more buy-in to biomass facilities. The facility in Ione in Buena Vista is shut down, and it's shut down because they're in litigation with SMUD, and it's a contractual dispute. So right now, the latest information is they're going into arbitration to try and resolve that. We're hoping at some point to have that as an availability for taking some of this material.
But these processes are not fast, unfortunately.
Any other questions before we move on? Monty, did you have something? And the other mic does work, it just needs to be clicked on.
Oh, that's okay. There's a little buzz in it anyways. I think this one's clear. Hi again, I'm Monty. I'm the new Forester for the BLM Mother Lode Field Office. Like I said, we have 9 counties spread out among 14 counties with 240,000 acres from Yuba to Mariposa, and I'm the only Forester. And I'm the only Forester, so. Yeah, so actually to touch on that biomass thing, the reason why Judy asked about that, I'm pretty sure she's aware that biochar doesn't just happen on its own. She's actually a specialist up in Alaska where she's from. She's here helping us out as a part of the prevention team for the BLM. We've assembled experts from Virginia, all across California, Nevada, and Alaska to come down and help us with this. The reason why she brought that up was she was wondering if you guys had looked into it as an option. We know that and we know you have, so that's good. The problem with having huge biomass plants that close is that it's very expensive. So one of the things we are working on with local California companies is getting pilot projects for portable biomass generators, biomass gasification units, to shorten the the process a little bit. It's just semi-heating up chips, wood chips, capturing the methane, feeding that into a converted engine, either a 4-cylinder, which they have now on a pallet size that fits in the back of a pickup truck. That's been shipped to, that's a working model on the market. 700 units have been shipped to 30 different countries around the world. It's powering villages everywhere. The one that we want to set up a pilot project with in Amador, Placer, and Calaveras is a 20-foot Connex box size that can generate 150, is it kilowatts? Megawatts? It's a big amount of energy for such a small, I'm sorry, I don't have my notes on that particular thing. But we realize that the biochar doesn't come out of nowhere. But if we can put portable biomass plants in communities where we can take this fuel that has nowhere else to go, generate electricity, it plugs right into the grid, spins your meter backwards. It's just like the same permits, operates on the same permits as solar power, except at different times. So it doesn't create the glut in the afternoon that solar does. So anyways, I'm getting into the details. The point is, the byproduct from that is biochar. The waste product is biochar. So if we can develop a market for biochar, then that makes these other thinning projects more viable. I got way off topic, but I think that's enough for now. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Monty. The next two items on our agenda, and these meetings are going to be run much like our core planning meetings. We are going to have a set agenda so we can try and get through it in the 2 hours or less of time designated. So the next item up is process and funding for removal of trees from private property. We've already talked about some of that, some of the efforts to get the federal FEMA designation so that we can get more money for private landowners. Coming up, we'll have PG&E address this issue also, and how they will help support local landowners on private property. Chris Anthony from CAL FIRE addressed the state side and how they're trying to help with this issue. I addressed the landowner assistance subgroup, so we're all, I know there were some people pretty upset here last week, because some people have 2 dead trees, some people have 100 dead trees on their property. I know one person had already expended $8,000 on tree removal. Well, your resources run out at some point. But PG&E will provide some help. There is going to be some help through the state grant process, through because of the state responsibility area money that we pay into. There'll be some help there through the fire safe councils. So we are trying to move. I know it's government and bureaucracy, and we're not moving that fast, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Next up will be Supervisor Morgan talking about, next item on our agenda, PSA about getting trees on the ground.
Well, even before I do that, to add on to what Supervisor Forster was saying about this money for private property owners, I just thought I'd share that Tuolumne County is partly dealing with that. They set up what they call the Tree Mortality Aid Program, TMAP, and it was mostly generated from the Sonora Kiwanis and Lions Club. There's really, to my knowledge, no state money going to those private property owners for this process, but they are looking into that. So that's something that perhaps Amador will look at also.
And also on that, that's a good segue into this, but an idea that came out of the landowner assistance subgroup was creating a landowner assistance program where businesses that want to help and donate money would work with nonprofits. And actually, private individuals could help. Supervisor Morgan had a private individual say that she had a windfall, basically, of some money come in and wanted to donate around $15,000 into a fund.
Right.
So we need to find the appropriate place to put that, so we have good quality control over it, and so the money goes to help those that need to help the most.
Right. And our expectation is that we would set up an approval process. Not everybody that wants help getting their trees down would immediately be able to get help. But we would look, I would hope, at the highest fire risk areas first. And obviously, there may be some income requirements too, low income. Okay, as far as PSA about getting trees on the ground, I would like to just refer you to the two websites that Mr. Anthony mentioned, the treetaskforce.org and prepareforbarkbeetle.org. There is a lot of information on those websites, and hopefully, I think our county website is getting in pretty good shape too for information. We just need to make sure people understand. One of the misconceptions that has spread largely around the own road association that I live in is, oh, sure, that 150-foot tall tree looks really brown, but it'll recover. No, it won't. No, it won't. As I think it was Chris Anthony said, they're already dead. They just don't know it yet, some of the trees, so.
All right, next up, I think you've heard enough from the county side, but we'd like to invite the representatives from PG&E that are here, and then Amador Water Agency to give us an idea what they're doing with Water Agency with their planning, but PG&E with tree removal, debris management, any help that can be provided for local citizens.
Can you hear me? Ooh, that's loud. All right. My name is Matt Waverly. I'm with PG&E's Land Management Department. Also here is Dylan George with Government Relations. I guess I should say I'm registered professional forester 2828. Is that how we need to introduce ourselves? Yeah, well, we earned it, right? We have to. So I'm about 900 foresters away from the Heisenbottles over there. So as Division Chief Anthony stated, this is pretty unprecedented, the conditions that are out there. Here in Amador County, I think, it probably doesn't look as bad to many, but it's going to get worse. So PG&E and reaction to these increase in hazard trees has increased patrols on the distribution lines and transmission lines. And with the additional trees, you're also adding on contractor capacity to deal with these hazards. So if you do notice trees around your homes, distribution lines that are PG&E, a hazard to PG&E's facilities, you can wait and patrols will come by and identify those trees and turn them from horizontal to vertical, as Supervisor Morgan had said. But you're also welcome to call PG&E and let them know that you have trees that are hazards on your property. I've heard that the response times have been pretty good on that. A friend of mine had I think he had 34 trees on his property that were dying. He called the 1-800. You guys want to write this down? 1-800-743-5000. He called that line, and within a week, ACRT, the contractor identifying those trees, came out, they marked them, and they're rescheduling a meeting to talk about how those trees will be mitigated. There's another part of the program that PG&E has implemented, and that's the debris removal program. So this is really fresh and new. but there's certain criteria that will qualify your trees. If they're on the ground, PG&E put them on the ground, we'll come out and remove those trees. So if you have, first of all, they have to be accessible. If they're within 100 feet of your residence or 20 feet of public road right-of-way, PG&E will come in and remove that material. You can actually have the option to have that material stay on site. They'll cut it up and place it somewhere. They'll cut up, or they'll chip it and spread it on your property if that's what you would like. And so that program is fairly new, but there is a flyer in the back of the room that looks like this that you can pick up if you're interested in this program. You could also find out more information on the PG&E website, pgne.com/trees.
Can you expand on the, you said 100 feet, within 100 feet of the primary residence? It doesn't include carports and things like that, correct? And isn't that spelled out a little bit on that form?
Why do you gotta challenge me here? Let's see. Well, it has to be within 100 feet of a permanent structure. So maybe Dylan, you know better, but it would be a garage, would be a permanent structure, carport, those types of things would also qualify.
But again, Matt, I want to emphasize to folks, because I've been asked this several times, it's only trees or material that has been qualified to be downed by PG&E, meaning it would hit one of the power lines if it wasn't taken down. So it's not just, you can't just hire someone to come and down your trees and then call PG&E to come clean everything up. That's not how it works.
Correct. PG&E would have had to have mitigated that hazard and created that mess. And this is above and beyond what PG&E has ever done in the past, but recognizing that the situation and conditions that are out there is, it's overwhelming. So trying to do a little bit.
That's great. Thank you.
I think that's all I got. Dylan, do you think of anything else to add?
I'll just reiterate on the number, an easier way to... Ellen, can you come on up to the mic, please?
I just want to mention the phone number one more time, and the easier way to remember it, it is 1-800-PGE-5000.
And this is Dylan George, by the way.
Any questions? Can you repeat that question?
So she was asking if like a drop line would qualify for this or for PG&E to come out and mitigate that hazard. Drop lines aren't part of the PG&E program, but you can contact PG&E and they will drop that line so that you can have a contractor come in to mitigate that hazard, and that would be free of charge. Yeah, so say your trees were mitigated by PG&E in 2015, you contact the number on this brochure, the program, and we'll come out and deal with those trees that are on the ground.
And the goal, not just with PG&E, but with everyone, is to get these trees that are affected down as soon as possible. Because as was mentioned at the workshop last week, if the trees are affected by the bark beetle or other pests, they need to come down. Otherwise, they become much more hazardous to bring down, and it costs you a lot more money to bring them down.
Yeah, and that's why PG&E's, increase the patrols and increase the contractor capacity to help deal with this issue. To stay on your property or to take it away? Every situation is going to be fairly unique. It's going to depend on the material, how big it is to begin with, because PG&E will look at the program as what's the highest and best use for that material. So if they can take it to a yard and turn that into a saw log, or they'll have to chip it into biomass for something, every situation is going to be unique. So you got to consider those situations. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, that is if they could get a log truck in there and load basically what you call a saw log, that's what they'll be doing. Yeah, well, again, it would kind of depend on what they're say it's a whole log in 150 feet. If they can make logs and bunk logs out of it and haul it on a log truck, they'll do that. But if what they're dealing with are short lengths, then they'll need some other type of equipment like an end dump or a short logger.
And
Yeah, every situation is unique, so
And one of
the professionals will deal with that.
And one of the problems with these bark beetle trees is that there's a fungus that begins right away, and there's a blue stain that forms on the potential lumber. Yeah, in some markets in other parts of the world, it is promoted as a special product. So
Why don't we have Damon from Amador Water Agency come
Thank
up
you,
next, and
Matt.
then if I could ask Jim Foster to come up from Ampine Timber Products and just briefly give us a little look at what you're doing.
Thank you. My name's Damon Wyckoff. I'm the operations manager for the Amador Water Agency. So up until this week, I would say, the agency's basically been in an observation mode with the county, looking at the best way that we can kind of bolster the county-wide approach to tree mortality. The thought initially was, from our side, was we don't want to cut the same tree down twice. So do we sit and stand with the core planning group as a member, or do we separately apply for CDAA funding in order to kind of get the jump on our facilities? And I think the decision ultimately has been that we're going to forge off on our own, but at the same time be directly involved with the county's core planning group. So we can do two things at that point. We can kind of zero in on the worst areas for tree mortality relative to county roads, while at the same time focusing on our actual infrastructure countywide. So if there's not a county road and we have tanks on private roads, we can go take the approach to getting those trees removed while at the same time kind of assessing the most critical areas countywide, and do we have agency facilities like pipelines or tanks or pump stations or sewage plants or lift stations in those areas. So a long way around the barn, Tom Tinsley is going to be coming to our board meeting on the 25th to give our board members an overview of tree mortality, because frankly they really haven't had the opportunity, except for a few, to get their teeth in this issue. So I think moving forward from them, Tom will give them an update, and that will give me the opportunity to kind of bring this to their attention in terms of let's move forward. We need to look at declaration of a state of emergency so we can then optimize tree removal, whether it's with the county or independent of the county. So that's the agency's approach in a nutshell.
Thank you, Damon, and I just want to applaud Damon, as I've done privately, because when he comes to these core team meetings, he has pointed out several times that we do need to coordinate PG&E, AWA, and the county, at minimum, need to coordinate so that one dead tree is only approached for becoming horizontal by one agency. We don't want AWA to show up in a place where we've already got the trees designated to be cut down by the county. So that's really an important coordination.
And as I see it, registered professional foresters are somewhat of a rarity. So we want to be able to take advantage of utilizing one, or with the county, or making whoever we're using work with the one the county is using. So I'm kind of thinking in those terms as well. And at the same time, my perspective is we have a lot of cross-country water mains, and if there are dead trees right next to a 10-inch, 8-inch water main going through somebody's property, we want to be able to take advantage of that for not only the agency, but for that property owner as well. And I think that's a good, prudent way of doing things. Any questions for me?
All right, thank you, Damon.
Thank you, Damon.
Jim, I want to, if you can come up, Jim Foster from Timber Products, but Terry Velasco is the manager of the plant, is also here. I also want to introduce Peter Crace from Cal OES, and Peter's been a tremendous amount of help to our county, but all the other affected counties too.
Thank you. I'm Jim Foster. I'm the wood buyer for Ampine Particle Board. So we're the particle board plant there, right behind the water tower in Martell. Mill's been there since the 70s. You know, we manufacture particle board. There's a sample back there on the table if you're not familiar. And we bring in sawmill residuals as our main source of wood for the mill. Wood shavings, you know, wood chips, that sort of thing. A year or so ago, we started to get into bringing some salvage logs in, king fire material, that sort of thing. And we're looking more now at, you know, with the situation at the bug kill timber. So we want to build that into our mix, maybe, you know, a 10% kind of a mix, something like that. Our intention is to bring these logs in. We can cold deck the things, and at some point, just have a big chipper come in and grind up some of the wood and use it in our process. So the mill uses, you know, Terry's plant's running about 4.5 days, you know, a week right now. Just that's what business holds our production, you know, capacity to our operation to. In a 24-hour period, he uses about 1.5 million pounds of dry wood. So it's a pretty big operation and can use a lot of wood. So I have a network of 5 or 6 Forsters and LTOs, local guys. I've had homeowners call and say, I've got dead trees on my property, what do I do? So I've been giving out those contact names. So essentially these Forsters or timber operators have a home for these logs. If they come and make a deal with you, you've got 20 trees and you cut a deal with the guy, he's got a home for the logs, he can bring them to me and we'll buy the things. So we're not accepting any loads from the public. You know, we can't do that from a safety perspective. If you come in with a flatbed trailer, we have a heel wound that's gonna, you know, bad things are gonna happen. So we have to control the thing. We have to have professionals bring these logs in, and, you know, we'll take them in that way. But we can't have the public, you know, dumping off logs and chunks and all that at our plant. It would just be a mess. But you know, we want to be good neighbors. We want to try to help the situation. Certainly working with the county on some of the, you know, the road hazard logs, and we see ourselves as a possible storage site. You know, one of the places the county could select to store the logs. We could consume them at a later date. Some of the issues that sawmills have with this timber, if it's dried out or it's blue stained, that doesn't really affect us. You know, it works pretty well for us. We want it dry anyway. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing. You know, we plan to get in the thing, you know, in a pretty big way, and then if we deck these logs, you know, if we get them set up, I think their shelf life could be a couple of years at least. You know, they'd still be usable for us. So, any questions on that?
We appreciate that, and it actually was just luck on our part that I was contacted by Ampine, I think within a couple of days before we held our first core planning team meeting on the tree mortality, so.
Yeah, I think you and Terry met up, so yeah.
You bet,
Yeah.
you bet, that was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that dirt between you and the tank?
Oh, that upper slab, that concrete slab up there, I'm not sure who owns that piece. I don't think it belongs to Timber Products.
And then you have a whole bunch of dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Sierra Pacific Industries owns a lot of that land, and they've developed around there. But I don't think that piece of it's ours. We have a fair amount of ground out there, and we'd be willing to expand our area there, and working with the local fire department on trying to make it safe and make sure we meet all the regs to deck up the logs and make sure we have fire water and all of that, you know. That's our intention, yeah.
So we want to thank Timber Products, for all of you, probably more common name is Ampine, but Timber Products is a tremendous partner with us in the county, employ a lot of people, and put out a good product.
I think at this point, we'd like to offer a chance to any other cooperators to get up and talk about their role in this. We have folks here.
Tom, did you have anything today, or you? No, I'm fine, thank you. Okay, all right. Okay. Tom Tinsley is our, what's your official title, Tom? Unit Forester for Amador El Dorado, and he on our core planning team and really doing a great job with us helping to negotiate the bureaucracy.
This lady, would you like to speak? Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? So I'm Heather Reith from State Parks. I'm our senior environmental scientist. We actually have, for our district, we have 6 counties within the 10 counties. And so we've been really trying to wrap our heads around this. We have Millerton Lake on up to Indian Grinding Rock. So we have finally created our own database that would help us if we were to end up getting federal funding. And as soon as our busy season ends, after Labor Day weekend, we'll be out with our tree hazard inspectors, and we'll inspect the boundaries of the parks. So if you're in Calaveras County, Tuolumne, or Amador, we'll be out there, and hopefully we'll get those marked and get those vertical or horizontal. Horizontal
Yeah,
to
from
vertical,
vertical to
during this winter, and get that material either burned, chipped, or out of the parks. So, and I know there's been some concern for our residents near Indian Grinding Rock, so I just wanted to let you know we're getting on it. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other partners that want to speak? If not, we'll move on. My goal is not to stay here as long as possible. It's to try and get through this. So next up, I'm going to ask our CAO, our County Administrative Officer, Chuck Eiley, to speak on the county allotting money to this issue, your taxpayer money, and what positions we're aiming at hiring.
The Board of Supervisors has, can you not hear? Can you hear me now? The Board of Supervisors has allocated $500,000 out of reserves to address the situation right now. Obviously, $500,000 ain't gonna make our match if we're going to end up required to come up with $1.25 million. But just as I guess a frame of reference, $500,000 consists of about 1.5% of the county's general fund on an annual basis. So $1.25 million's up over 3%. So it's not something that we can just afford to lose quite readily. So we are trying to do this as efficiently as we can, and to that end, we are in the process of putting an RFQ together for the first member of our team, which is going to be the registered professional forester, that will be required to certify that the trees are actually dead before we cut them down. And we're working with state OES to make sure that RFQ is done in accordance with their and FEMA requirements to ensure that we do get as much money back as we can.
An RFQ, or request for qualifications.
Correct. So once we get that out, once we get that put together and signed off by the state, then we're going to be going forward with that and trying to start spending down that $500,000 that the board has allocated. The board's reserves sit at about $7.5 million right now, so $500,000 of that formally gone right now. We'll be digging into that. We have the ability to cover these costs, but it's not something that we can do well into the future.
The good news is that we recognize that this is a long-term project, and so I think whatever our match is, it's not going to just come out of this fiscal year.
That's correct. And the other issues we've got is that the money needs to be spent by the county before it gets reimbursed by the state. So the $500,000 we will keep an eye on, and if it's enough, if we can make that work, we will do so. And if we need more, we'll be coming back to the board.
But our staff is working, our CAO and our General Services Director are working with Peter Crace from Cal OES to make sure that we're doing everything right so that we get the appropriate reimbursement, the maximum reimbursement, I should say. And that hiring of a registered professional forester is the first step. Hopefully, we can wrap something in there where the company that they deal with or the people they deal with have some kind of GIS or finance background. If not, we'll have to hire additional personnel to cover at least a part-time finance position or a part-time GIS to make sure that every tree that comes down is documented so that we can get reimbursement for those trees. As a representative from Mariposa told me last week, you want to GIS those trees, you want to take before and after pictures, everything you can do to provide documentation so that you are eligible for full reimbursement. All right, any additional items today? I want to thank all of our presenters and the people that came in today. Way in the back, Merv Vicini is with Vicini Greenway, so I wanted to mention Merv. He's always involved in these processes along with all the other local professionals. So, and once again, thank you to the Cal-Am team for all of your great work. Very much appreciated by County of Amador.
We hope after we get this CDAA grant that we can use some of what you do as a in-kind match.
With that, these meetings will be planned about every 3 months. The core meetings will continue on a monthly basis. And we're going to try to move forward as quickly as possible, but do it right so we get full reimbursement of the 25%. So with that, next meeting, Monday, November 7th. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.